Hello and welcome. We are back with another one of these crazy Shadowrun character generation things that seem to be fairly popular, so I'm going to keep doing them. Today we are going to talk about riggers, their role on a Shadowrun team, Shadowrun 5th edition and riggers, and then get into actually building one. It's going to be a little bit different than the other ones because riggers are in a strange place because what really is a rigger and all of that other stuff. So I'm going to do a little verbal, I don't want to say dive to it, for a little talking about some of that kind of stuff, probably for about a half hour or so. Then I'm going to cut the video and start up a new one where we actually just go straight into the character generation. Due to the way that they are set up, like on a team, everybody knows what a decorator is there to do, and they're usually built fairly similarly. Riggers are not that way, so it's going to get into a little bit more complexity. First thing I'm going to talk about is the rules. And when you are looking to sit down with a group to play some Shadowrun and one of you wants to play a rigger, first thing you're going to want to do after you guys get out and character concept and that kind of stuff is talk about the rules because the rules are a mess for riggers. There are contradictions all over the place. The rigger section stuff is like, oh, when you jump into a vehicle, you get +1 dice in hot sim. It's like, well, I'm hot sim. Shouldn't I get +2 dice as per the matrix section because I'm using the matrix things? There's other aspects that don't make a lot of sense where all of your pilot groundcraft, not ground, all of your pilot skills are reaction linked. Where when you're hot sim or cold sim, doesn't make a lot of sense to use your physical attributes because it is just your mind. Then there's gunnery, which is like an agility based skill, but uses logic if you're in the matrix. But can't I also just use a control device action, which is a matrix action, to shoot that gun, which then gets you back into different skills for different situations, hot sim and cold sim. You're going to want to nail out a few of those kind of things before you get really into playing, just so that every time you're going along and doing something, you don't have to stop and look up the million different rules problems that riggers have. The second part of the rules is going to be just in general gameplay aspects of things. Um, how much does your GM and table want to deal with things? Do you want to roll individual initiative for all of your drones, or do you want to do it as just, all right, this is initiative roll is for your roto drones, this one is for your Dobermans, this one is for your fly spies, and get into it that way. The second part of it is how direct and on top of actual controlling of things are you going to be? Do you want to just teamwork test out a lot of stuff? Because you can do that with significant coverage of fly spies or whatever your scouting drone of choice is. Do Are they allowed to teamwork test between themselves? Is that something you're even going to allow? Because they are programs following a thing, not necessarily somebody that I can tell you, hey, this is my personal experience. You can work through it from there. The the rest of it is kind of will fall into some of the rest of the stuff I'm about to talk about. After the rules, riggers have a bad habit of being the fifth wheel. Um, there are they share this actually with faces. Typically, when you start up a game and you have a 4-man team, you're going to get somebody wants to be the badass troll street samurai, full of more wear than meat at this point, and just his job is to send lead den downfield. Somebody's going to want to be a magician, and somebody's going to want to do some kind of matrix, either a Deca or a Technomancer. Typically, it'll be the first time a person has ever played an RPG and he wants to jump right into playing a Technomancer, and your GM just cringes and cries to himself a little bit on the inside. And usually an Adept. Those four tend to be your baseline for creating a Shadowrun team as a gaming group. Faces and riggers, they're a little bit more on the outside of things. They're the fifth wheels. They're, oh, well, I can't have two fighters in my group because then it gets a little weird. I can't have two clerics. So people have that mindset of not wanting two street samurai or two mages or two deckers. And Granted, I can get into the no two deckers thing because then everything turns into a teamwork test, and it just makes the Matrix, which is already a slog, into a super slog full of slug juice, and it's gross. Makes everything way worse for the people that aren't the Matrix or the GM. That's unfortunately a problem with Shadowrun as a whole, and it has been that way since first edition. It's unfortunate. Um, However, there's a good news in that while none of the roles are really required for a proper Shadowrun team, its riggers are similar to faces that I mentioned in my face video, are force multipliers. You can make everybody better at everything you do, more so than just a direct another street samurai or another magician or that kind of stuff. Um, Moving into my next point of everything and nothing. What makes a rigger? Is it a guy who uses drones? No. Yeah. Is it a guy who's gonna do recon for you? Yeah. Is it a guy who is gonna be out there on the front line shooting? Yeah. Is it a guy who's gonna sit in the van and use his mobile army from there? Yeah. Is it a guy who picked up a comlink, a drone, and a couple of autosofts? Yeah. But at the same time, they may do things a rigger does, but they are not actually riggers. The one thing that makes a person a rigger is the control rig implant, which is another pretty big deviation from the rest of the Shadowrun archetype stuff. They You can be a mage in a lot of different flavors, but you're still at your heart a mage. You can do a lot of things that a rigger does, but you're not really a rigger unless you have that control rig. It lets you slip loose of your squishy meat sack and find a new home in a warm metallic casing of steel and whatever else futuristic materials they use to make these drones out of. Gone are your fleshy meat pieces and replaced with wonderful technology. That's the core difference between all of these other people who may use drones, and drones are fantastic for a lot of people to use. However, they're not exclusive. If you aren't a mage, you cannot use spells. That's just simple. If you do not have a cyber deck of any flavor or a technomancer, you can't hack things. If you don't have a good skill in shooting stuff, I guess you can't be a street samurai, but that doesn't really work out. If you do not have that implant, you can't do that. It's expensive on the essence, which makes it unattractive for people who may want to do like an adept rigger or something along those lines. But it's not terribly bad on the Nuyen side. Um, it it's a weird thing because everybody's always like, oh, my rigger, and then you look at their sheet and it's like, well, they don't have a control rig, they just have five roto drones all logged up with uh sniper rifles, and it's like, I'm gonna. It's not the same. It's not what really does it for you. You're just some computer nerd in a van with a bunch of flying guns. Then the last thing I kind of want to get into until I start moving into more direct things is that you are more than a chauffeur. A lot of times people will have a rigger on their team, and as they're kind of making things, he will be the guy that goes out and buys a car and a big van, and he's the guy that's driving the team everywhere. Uh, Granted, most riggers kind of end up doing that thing because it's with a big van, you can stick like an automotive shop or a hardware shop or something along those lines into it, and from there you can do field repairs and modification stuff to your equipment. Um, but that is not what you are there to do for the team. It's a side effect rather than a the thing you are there to. You bring a decker on a run to hack things. You bring a street samurai on the run to hopefully not have to shoot people, but to supply other other physicality to things. Like your high agility street sam will probably also have a couple of points in locksmith, something along those lines. You don't bring a rigger to drive you. You bring a rigger to supplement the team in different fashions, which will depend upon the rigger build that you get into yourself. The as I take a drink to stall for words. From here, it gets a little more who is your character. I'm of the mind there are two major ways that riggers usually are built. There's either the guy that's out there, boots on the ground, doing everything with the team, directly interacting with everybody. Then there's the nerd in the van. Granted, the guy in the van can still interact with the world through drones and fly spies and that kind of thing, but at the same time, his physical skills are effectively useless because you can't do anything with them. The sport, like, yeah, you could roll perception with your drone, but your drone's got a limit of 3 to it because that's how sensors work. So you're not going to spot the sneaky ninja dude who is hiding someplace. Um, you are also, I don't want to say a liability, but being in the van means that that van is probably parked somewhere nearby and a big van circling the block a couple of times. And that starts to get a little suspicious. Um, Equally suspicious is the van that is parked someplace and just kind of hanging out there. I don't like being in the van because then if somebody gets shot and goes down, I can't pick them up and carry them out of there. Or if something happens to me, if I'm hot sim doing stuff and we get into some combat slash cyber combat and the decker starts pounding me and as I'm hot sim, take physical damage and I start bleeding out in the truck, I'm I'm dead. There's no way that those guys are getting out of that fight that they're in to me to help me out. There's a couple of more drones that have been released in Rigger 5 and that kind of stuff that theoretically it's possible that like you're wearing a bio monitor, your team sees, oh crap, van guy went down, let me hit a button to turn on the drone in the back to go medkit him. But that's not something I want to risk my life on. Um, Meanwhile, the on foot rigger, they they can do just about everything that the van guy can do without a lot of the drawbacks of the van guy. They will be there on your team and can help with whatever it is you need to do. Say you're a rigger who doesn't have a lot of high combat skills and you guys are on a job to escort a guy, instead of occupying your street, Sam, with manhandling this dude, dragging him around, having a gun on him, making sure he doesn't make a break for it, you can pass that job off to your rigger. Your rigger's not as physically imposing as the street samurai, but when you've got a gun to the guy's head and you're holding him by his manacles and dragging him around, you don't need to be that physically imposing. You just need to be able to control that one guy, and that's fairly easily for any singular Shadowrunner to do. In addition, your drones are fairly autonomous. Walking around the place, they have just as much ease of getting into there as they do if you were sitting out in the van. Granted, in the van, you could get them into some more ridiculous tight places if you just took the moment to jump from one to the other to get them uh, higher dice pools, the lower thresholds, and all the other benefits that come with being jumped in. But at the same time, as long as you're not just passing out in the middle of the hallway as the on foot rigger, you're you're right there anyway. Like you just like, all right, we're going through here. I'm gonna sit down for a minute. I'm gonna jump, and then I'm gonna get drone 1, 2, and 3 up over here, and then I'm gonna get back with my body and walk around. Only kind of suspicious when you are there, just kind of um, when you're in like the public view to sit down for a place, go physically slump, and then have uh everybody else kind of look at you like, well, why are they sleeping now? Um, then we kind of get into the two other aspects of the play styles of the swarm or the support rigger. The swarm rigger is very obvious with what it says it is. He's going to be the guy that's rolling up 10 roto drones deep, 5 roto drones deep. He's going to get heavy weapon mounts on them to put big frag off guns on them. He's gonna load them with APDS, and he's gonna that drone's worth like 20 grand. So when it gets shot and that 8 soak roto drone goes down to a stiff breeze, well, uh, that's 20 grand. That's unfortunate. That sucks. That being said, he can put out a lot of damage because he is packing large guns and he is throwing a lot of expensive ammunition downrange from probably a place where they may not be ready for it. More dangerous if he is a uh, if he is jumped in using like a sniper drone from way up in the middle of nowhere. That's basically a surprise test on anybody that is going to fail that because they didn't know the drone was outside waiting for them to go throw their cigarette out the window. The support rigger is a lot more low maintenance. They're going to be the kind of guy who is walking around using a Doberman, which is like 5 grand, and throw a Ingram Smart Gun on there, which is another 800, firing regular ammunition. Those guys are disposable. They're going to roll out to a plate like a high combat scenario. Imagine rigger, street samurai, adept, physical fighter type people, we will say. They're going to engage in some kind of firefight. The rigger's going to use these drones, suppressive fire areas, to just kind of mechanically to apply dice pool penalties to the people your hitters are actually shooting at. Thematically for area denial and that kind of stuff. They're going to be the ones that have a bunch of fly spies they put out and just kind of have them sit there looking around. Um, or a bunch of specific one-shot use type drones. The idea being, I'm not going to dump a huge pile of Nuyen into it because when it gets shot to pieces, I don't want to go home and cry. I've seen a lot of people talk recently with Rigger 5 coming out. It's like, oh my god, I'm going to get this car and I'm going to tweak it out with this and mod it up with this and all of this other crazy stuff. And it's like, dude, that car is 200 grand now. What happens when it gets shot? What happens when you run through a red light and they get your plates? What happens when you're driving while trog? Any of those kinds of things, it is a large investment that can end up, I don't want to say ruining your character, but crippling is probably more the statement. They talk about it in the core rulebook of a decker's cyber deck is what he's going to protect with his body rather than let something happen to it. And riggers that get really into making expensive vehicles and putting big guns on those vehicles are the same way. Only they are more often than the decker putting those expensive items into a direct line of fire where that kind of stuff is going to happen to it. It's they sound kind of similar with the way that the like a support rigger who is going to bring in some Dobermans with Ingrams to help out his team is probably going to want to bring one per physically active fighter. That'll let you give them a simple command of suppressing fire, street samurai A's, target, and that's all it'll do. You don't really need um, to do anything more interactive than that because it's got a dog brain on it. All it's got to do is roll its initiative when combat happens. First action is hold action until it sees whatever Street Samurai is going to be shooting at. Or maybe Street Samurai can do a simple to designate a target to it as like a sent message little control to it. Something like that. Um, and then it'll begin suppressing that target. And that's what it does. You have another one for your physical adapt who is, you know, because they tend to be this way, we'll say he's a crazy sword ninja physical adapt. That's what people like to make for some crazy reason. I don't know why you bring a knife to a gunfight in a world full of gunfights. So it'll be, suppressing that target, or maybe suppress whoever is shooting at him, or you set it up so that once that drone is out there and doing its thing, the rigger doesn't need to pay any attention to it. Maybe if your guys all of a sudden, oh crap, we gotta cheese it and get out of here. It's like, all right, now Rigger's going to take his complex action as turn to hit his control device action. Everybody's cheesing it. Drones have been told this area where we are running from, all three of them will say are now going to suppress that area. Just bullets everywhere. Um, lets everybody else get out of there, and kind of can get your enemies under a bit of a weight of numbers kind of situation. The swarm rigger is going to be the guy who's like, all right, I'm going to jump into this roto drone with a Ares Desert Strike on it, and I'm going to command my other drones to. They're going to shoot at that target. I'm going to shoot at this target. Next initiative pass, like, all right, that target's down. Throughout, however it went down, we're now going to switch to this target, and then every round is just kind of more direct control because that is how they are built. You've invested that extra money into your making your drones good, so you're going to want to use them for more than a simple dice bowl penalty from a suppressive fire or disposable soldiers type situations. Um, in addition to the physicality of the drones, you will have a number of different recon options in fly spies or kanamushis or even optical drones. Like when you go in through the thing, like, oh, I have cyber eyes, and they scan you with their mad scanner. They're just going to show up. But then when you're inside, you can pop that eye out and have it roll around doing scouting things. Um, Smuggling apartments, that kind of thing, you can also get in there. The rest of it is pretty, not generic, but pretty. Um, yeah, I guess generic's going to have to work. Of what else the rigger is going to do for the team. Yeah, they will probably have a large vehicle to transport their equipment. They will also probably have a decent logic and some computer skills. Electronic warfare is great and has become, I shouldn't say it's great. Electronic warfare is okay and has become significantly better with the addition of Rigger 5, the additional matrix actions going in there. That's great. Take an underused skill and give it more stuff. That would be fantastic catalyst. There are plenty of other opportunities for you guys to continue doing that things. They will likely also pick up the various mechanic skills, industrial, aeronautics, nautical, and automotive, which can be used for a great number of things that aren't necessarily the the simple repair stuff. If you are being chased by a go gang and you look out the back, your GM may allow you to roll automotive mechanics instead of perception to see how the vehicle has been modded out to see if you can notice that kind of stuff, because that is a way more specific skill than your perception. I, as a GM, would give you more related information to that than just in a general perception test. The other option is okay, kind of like a knowledge skill. Like as an automotive mechanic, you would probably know a bit about what police not tactics, police vehicles use, what they're gonna kind of stuff. The uh, the nautical and that kind of thing, in a similar vein, but in a um, significantly more narrow uses, because most standard games don't have a lot of water stuff going on. So that's unfortunate. But the engineering group is a great four skill group and is pretty easy to get enough mileage out of automotive and industrial mechanic, because that'll let you do some heating and cooling knowledge stuff that'll probably help sewer systems and that kind of thing. Just there's a lot of mileage that can be gotten there as long as your GM and the run itself is willing to work with it. Uh, so I think that's all I have on the general aspect of riggers right now. They can go a lot of different ways. I'm going to talk to the Twitch chat for a minute, see what kind of rigger we want to build, and then I'm going to start up that video, which I will be linked in the description of this video, along with all of the other videos that we do on the various types of riggers. Um, Go ahead and if you like, leave comments. That'd be great. I still find this whole situation of recording things to put up on YouTube for other people to consume later as a reference material a bit weird. But thank you guys, and I will see you soon. I don't know if I hit that stop.